Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. I just wanted to mention you could join us at canadapoly.com and join in the conversation. We have quite robust conversations on the forum, and they're always fun, always interesting, always colorful, very colorful, and a lot of good people as well. So check it out. As well, some people were asking, can you make a forum to talk about education and what's going on in education? And so I said, yeah, sure, here we go. So link to that is in the description. Check it out if you're interested. And you can also join the newsletter, which is still pending. Sorry, everyone. Pending, but I'm working on it. So thanks for your patience. I don't want to use MailChimp or any of the other ones because they can turn you off. It's self-hosted, and I'm waiting on Amazon to hear back. So I am working on it. I apologize. But fundamentally, it is self-hosted, and nobody else can turn me off. Like it's not. Oh, you said you put a trigger word in your newsletter or something like that, and now your service is cut off. I don't want to deal with that, and I don't want to censor myself to use a mail service. That seems outside of the norm to me. So I self-host, so that's what's going on with that. So I appreciate the suggestions. However, okay, let's move into the news. What is going on? Today's YouTube show will be a little bit shorter, I think, and we're going to move over to Rumble earlier because I've got lots to talk about, and it has to do with stuff that YouTube doesn't like. So sorry about that, all the YouTubers who don't want to follow me. No problems though. Here we go. Pierre Poilievre is responding to yesterday's budget announcement. Now, when the budget is announced, it takes a little bit of time for people to go through it. It's a very long budget. I heard it was like, it's more than 200 pages. It was a long budget. And so people are going through it to look at exactly what the language says and blah, 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 blah. But somebody said in one of the comments yesterday, having the budget become a legitimate third story is notable. And a budget that we didn't get into, we didn't have a budget in 2020. They were like, nah, it's been 2 years. The longest we've gone in Canada without a budget. And basically they were just like, yeah, we're going to keep doing more of the same as what we've been doing. That's basically it. And we're just going to keep spending, despite the fact that the PBO made really clear, very clear, we can't make the spending permanent. And 2 years, not permanent, 3 years, permanent, right? Like 3 years is a permanent spending, something you should budget for, right? Which is why government continues to expand. But what are we getting out of this expanded 100 billion, right? And the initial reaction right away, people were saying, it's an election budget, it's a $100 billion bribe budget, right? That's what the Sun News said. And other people are concerned about the debt. And here's Mr. Poilievre, and his concern is, by next year, Trudeau will have added more debt than all other prime ministers combined. First World War, Second World War, the 1970s situation, all of that combined, plus more, right? In order to build Canada, all of that money to fight COVID-19. All of it. Wow. That's incredible. Is it not? Like that is a feat of incompetence, right? Because it's not like we're living the high life here for all that money. It's not like we're going, yeah, you've solved all the problems when we live in utopia. Money's no object. Everybody loves everything. And, it's party time in Canada. That's not what's happening, right? It's very divided. It's very us versus them, and the government versus us, right? It's very, very, very conflicted at this point in time. I wouldn't say there's a lot of unity in Canada at this point in time. I wouldn't say there's a lot of, we're all in this together, we can lean on each other, bro. Or sis, it doesn't work. But you get what I'm saying. It's a situation where fundamentally we've spent a whole lot of money. Again, it comes to mind crypto, and you've made a bad buy, right? It's like you spent all this money, and what did you get? Just a bad crypto coin. Darn it, right? And it just keeps losing value. Only gamble with money you can lose, folks. Okay, only gamble with money you can lose. Maxime Bernier says of our budget, where to begin? The Cara Freeland budget sets massive new records for spending, deficit, new programs, intrusions in provincial jurisdictions. It's a socialist disaster. A PPC government would revoke, cancel, scrap, abolish, terminate all of it. All of it. Yeah. Any kind of, O'Toole's not going to win, but I fear that I watched the 2020 presidential election and I saw what happened. So I feel like it doesn't matter who's popular. It doesn't matter how many rallies you have and flags you wave. It doesn't matter what you want. The outcome of the next inevitable election is going, not if not predetermined, is strongly implied, right? Right. I just, sorry, I wish that I believed different. I really do. I wish I believed different, because then I'd have more fight in me, I think. But man, I watched that election. I saw what happened. Yikes. Yowza, right? Okay. Macdonald-Laurier Institute, back to the budget, says, in response to the federal budget, Jack Mintz warns that Canadians should take note that they will be paying $40 billion in taxes just to cover the interest expenses. Yeah, that's a lot of money. Here's the article. Sorry, there we go. There are no more fiscal anchors holding back the Liberals after this budget. Jack Mintz in the Financial Post. Monday's federal budget is the first in more than 2 years, is about pre-election spending financed by heavy deficits. The Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland, is rolling the dice that never-ending deficits will be manageable. There is no plan to balance the budget or to bring the federal debt back to pre-pandemic levels. If inflation and interest rates are subdued in the medium term, then there's no need to worry, at least in Freeland's eyes. You have to dig pretty deep to find any reference to a fiscal anchor in this eye-straining 724-page, I was right, more than 200 pages, federal budget. Only one reference on page 53 can be found. The government is committed to unwinding COVID-related deficits and reducing the federal debt as a share of the global, as a share of the economy over the medium term. This is a pretty weak fiscal anchor. It perpetuates deficit financing forever. It is also easily violated every time the economy slips into a recession, such as our recent one. As debt ratchets up the share of the economy, the rule permits bigger and bigger federal deficits over time. So as debt ratchets up as a share of the economy, the rule permits bigger and bigger federal deficits. But we're still out of whack. We're still, and he provides the math, but I feel like it's hard. It doesn't translate well. So I'll leave that for you to read. But we're way our federal debt is much larger than what the formula says we can handle. So that's not so good. Not so good, right? Moving into Doug Ford. This article by Don Martin, it's from CTV. It says it's time to replace. It's time for adult supervision or a premier replacement in Doug Ford's Ontario. There's a lot of it I agree with. There's a lot of it that's going on that he talks about that I'm frustrated with Doug Ford. But it seems like there isn't, if we replace Doug Ford with somebody else, we solve the problem. I don't think that that's necessarily true, because the problem isn't Doug Ford necessarily. It's the bad advice he's getting from the medical officer of health. The best bet we get is a premier who behaves like DeSantis or the Texas governors or somebody who is willing to reopen the economy, somebody who understands what's going on. But Don Martin's not arguing for that. He's arguing that we need somebody to blindly listen to the experts and allow further lockdowns. You'll see what I mean when I read it. Let's go. But that's the concerning part to me. It seems like it's a Pied Piper tune to get you to follow, and then where you follow, like once you're walking along and you're like, oh yeah, I agree with what you're saying here. He's like, yeah, we need vaccines too, right? Or we need blah too, and it's like, well, hold on a sec. I don't necessarily know what you're talking. But by this time, you've gone too far, right? Like, it's a slippery slope, right? So here's the article. Whenever Doug Ford puts on that feel your pain, folks, I'm being honest with you face, his pandemic fighting plan from yesterday is about to be slammed into reverse and replaced by something even worse. I've been watching politicians since covering Calgary City Council alongside the televised reporter and future premier named Ralph Klein. Yes, I'm that old, and I've seen such raging ineptitude, and I've never seen such raging ineptitude as Ford is now showing as Ontario premier. And never have life or death actions and reactions fallen so short of the minimum threshold for competent leadership. The only consistency shown by Doug Ford in recent months has been boneheaded inconsistency, a pattern which peaked last week when Ford ignored his own expert advisory group to issue a series of COVID-19 edicts largely divorced from any connection to the risk of transmission. Now, this is skating the line. This is this is a little bit of foreshadowing to where we're going, right? People will agree with that. Why close the playgrounds and leave other things open? But they'll not think it through. They don't play the game out, right? And the game out is he's advocating for keeping playgrounds open and shutting down businesses. Not just retail businesses like Walmart, but like meatpacking plants and food businesses and other businesses. Just, why would you keep factories like Amazon distribution centers and all of those other places open when you closed parks. Parks aren't a big transmission thing, but all of these Amazon places, distribution centers have multiple cases. So now the edict, and I'll show you in a minute, is talking about having anybody with 5 cases of COVID needs to get shut down. Well, I mean, now big corporations are being targeted because the larger you are, the more likely 5 cases you'll have, right? What am I, Yoda? Okay. His guiding principle, back to the article, seems to be to lock down where he doesn't need to and leave open areas that he should have closed. He compounds the damage of that misguided misdirection by reopening services at the first hint of a case count drop and only reclose them when the next wave is too big to be stopped. As for chronic inconsistencies, consider how his health minister insisted there would not be an enhanced lockdown, only to shutter the patios as soon as restaurants and bars reloaded their fridges and beer kegs. See, all of this I agree with, right? Or that schools were closed the day after the education minister promises that classes were safe and would remain open. Again, I agree with that, but it doesn't address the issue of the unions getting involved, right? The unions getting their noses put in where they don't belong. And that's, I mean, really what happened here. And the unions took control of the school situation. And now we're in a situation where, like, well, somebody else put it quite succinctly, where the week started with, schools being promised to stay open, and then it ended with playgrounds being canceled, right? Like, and people were not happy, right? That's an understatement. Back to the article. And what really got parents howling was having playgrounds and other outdoor recreation deemed too dangerous for their bored kids. Ford disappeared from sight and reversed the decision in a tweet from a cabinet minister's account. We'll talk about Ford disappearing from sight in a minute as well. Minister's account. Ford couldn't even pitch stepped up pandemic surveillance without dropping the ball. Major Ontario police forces quickly rejected Ford cabinet's decree granting them stop and question powers for anyone suspected of straying outside their homes without an essential purpose. Think about that for a second. How over the top must a decision be for police chiefs to refuse new enforcement tools? These aren't enforcement tools. This is something that would never stand up in court because they had no reason to detain these people in their cars. They had no reason to stop and question these people other than them being outside of their house. But in a free and democratic society, you're innocent until proven guilty, right? You can't be stopped. You can't be held against your will. You can't be questioned by police just by the fact that you're out and about in the community. It's a public road. You're allowed to be there and not and have a right to not be questioned by police. This is a massive overreach. The police would not be able to do this. This practice was stopped in Toronto. They used to do this in order to stop shootings and stuff. And now they're just legislating against legal gun owners. But that's interesting too, right? But it is incredible what we've decided is acceptable and what is not acceptable, right? The article is trying to sell you on the idea that these are enforcement tools that the police said, oh no, hold on, we're not going to do that. But it's not an enforcement tool. It's an encroachment and a removal of your basic rights. And the police knew that it would never stand up in court. We can't waste our resources policing people into submission into their homes. They can't do that. And that's what they were pushing back on. And why didn't the MPs push back on this? This is an egregious encroachment. This is an unbelievable overstep. It should never have been rolled out. But art of the deal, we got played. Thank you for opening the playgrounds, Doug Ford. And I can't go to Manitoba or Quebec or leave my health unit. I wonder if I can leave my health unit still. I wonder if I could drive to Toronto tomorrow, right? I wonder how long I can drive to Toronto. Right, just without telling anybody that, or asking permission of a regional supervisor or something like that. How long before that's necessary to travel? Have papers in your car to make sure people understand I've got a meeting in Toronto that can't be online. Right? It's interesting. I don't know. So, and even more interesting, and this is where I stopped reading the article, when Don Martin is trying to reimagine government overreach as police refusing enforcement tools. That's enough for me, thanks. Moving forward. Doug Ford says the Ontario Liberals are calling on Premier Doug Ford to resign over his handling of the COVID-19 crisis. Do these guys remember who the Ontario Liberals are? Kathleen Wynne got chased out of office because she was so awful, and Doug Ford is more hated than Kathleen Wynne right now. If there was an election held tomorrow, good luck, Doug. good luck, buddy. I'm sorry, but good luck, Ontario. I mean, it was nice knowing you. It was really nice knowing you. I really enjoyed growing up in Ontario. It was a beautiful place. But the Ontario Liberals are in no position to be calling anybody for anything. The Toronto Sun says, time to trade in that Liberal minivan. They got seven members. They're not an official party. They don't have official party status. Great that they're calling on Doug Ford to resign. And there's a bunch of people calling on Doug Ford to resign, but all of the articles are similar to the Don Martin article that I showed you at the beginning of the clip. It's Don Martin, right? It all kind of snakes around to sneakily, it was Don Martin, to sneakily advocate for things that you don't really want, right? And to sell it like, yeah, we all hate Doug Ford. Let's get Doug Ford, but while we're out there, let's all get. Right? I don't know, man. Del Duca, right? Del Duca found it fitting to put out a statement about George Floyd, but he did not mention this. What happened in Gravenhurst yesterday when the thug OPP officer attacked a 12-year-old for no reason at all. Okay, so Del Duca talking about an American trial result, but no comment on this, and he wants to be the leader of Ontario. Listen.
And most of us did it.
Oh.
The police came to the skate park to tell us to put our masks on, and most of us did it. But I recorded a video saying like we have a right to breathe and stuff. And then he came asking for my identification, and I told him I was 12, and he came over and took my scooter because I was trying to leave, and I didn't let go, and he threw me to the ground.
So you said I have a right to breathe, and he didn't let me go, and he threw me to the ground, right? Calgary police. What was it that George Floyd was saying? I can't breathe, right? That was the thing? That was the thing for George Floyd? Similar. Anyway, Calgary police put out, we know there is much for us to improve on, but we also know we have a responsibility at this time to support racialized community. Aren't all communities racialized? Because humans have races, and we live in communities, like racialized communities. They put out a statement on George Floyd. Weren't these the guys who went into the church to intimidate the pastor that one time, right? The Calgary police, right? But they're trying to do better by virtue signaling on an American trial. That seems weird to me. Doesn't it seem weird to you? Anyway, very strange. This George Floyd thing falling out in Canada. The 12-year-old boy who was attacked by the OPP officer that should probably be having statements from police stations and chiefs around the country that isn't. That CTV is calling the 12-year-old a young man, right? Quite interesting, right? Young man, right? For a 12-year-old who gets attacked by a cop. Young man, what were you doing around here, young man? Very interesting. Provincial police are investigating a video that surfaced online showing an interaction between an officer and a young man on a scooter that happened Sunday in Gravenhurst. I don't know. Peel Police taking over Gravenhurst skate park incident involving OPP. Where's all the police chiefs that are speaking out against this bully cop who's attacking 12-year-olds for skating in the skate park? Where are people asking for all of the other associated things that go along with that, right? It is a very, very scary situation when we are just being dictated to by unaccountable people. Right? It's a very difficult thing to get accountability these days from our leaders and from our government. Okay, so I wanted to show you this. I thought it was really interesting. Theresa Tam yesterday put out a statement on Twitter. And these statements are a pretty regular thing. Like all year, Theresa Tam, and there were a lot of people who used to follow her, lots of people retweeting her, talking about her. She's the medical officer of Health for Canada, big high-profile position, blah, 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 all that stuff. And she put out yesterday this tweet. It says, COVID's key concerns in Canada, nationally, 7-day moving average, blah, blah, blah. It's just information about COVID. Stuff that is kind of dated, stuff that you've become blind to. It's that painting that you put up in your living room and you really like it. The colors pop and everything. And then 3 weeks later, you stop looking at it. You can't see it anymore. But somebody comes in and they're like, oh, love that painting. And you're like, oh, yeah, I bought it. But you've become sight blind to it. You don't even look at it anymore, right? Same things happened to Theresa Tam. Look at the numbers. The 34 likes and 27 retweets, right? Case counts, right? This is heavy strain on local healthcare resources continues, especially infection rates are highest, blah, 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 all that stuff. It's very similar rhetoric to the same tweet a year ago. But look at the number difference. right? 1 of 5, another feature of COVID outbreak is to be aware of as many, as we measure our progress in this different character and intensity of spread depending on where you are in the country. Now, I guess it's not apples to apples. Here's another one, 1 of 2, right? And like this one's 1 of 2 as well. 1 of 2, 2 of 2, right? And 34, 24, this one's got 1.5K and 144 retweets, right? 1.3K April 20th, 341 retweets, right? It's very... the Twitter feed has stopped, right? The people have walked away, right? And yet still the edicts remain, right? Still, in fact, I would say she's more powerful now than then, right? And so that's very interesting to note, right? And I said no accountability. Here's how it all works. Here's how the game is played. Okay, just in case you weren't sure, the county says, and this is American, but it is very, very similar to here, I think. I think it's American anyway. Maybe it's not. Anyway, maybe this person is Canadian. But regardless, county says we don't have the authority over the school board. The school board says we follow the county's mandate to avoid confusion. Experts, we don't make policy, we just provide the information. Policymakers, we're following the experts' advice. It's never anybody's fault, right? I tweeted this out and I plugged in my local medical officers of health and the people in the correct roles. I was like, see, it's never this person's fault. It's always that person's fault. And when you catch up to that person, they're going to point, right? It's them. And they can never get the person who's accountable to answer a question because they don't answer questions they don't like. No, they don't. Nuh-uh. Here is Dr. Fauci. You know what? I'm going to head over to Rumble. I'm just going to head over to Rumble now. I was going to do the rest of this segment, but I've probably already committed YouTube, the terrible, awful YouTube demonetization statements or whatever. Even talking about Theresa Tam, that's enough. They're like, oh, hold on. COVID misinformation, done. So what are you going to do, right? So if you want to watch the rest of the show, head on over to Rumble or BitChute, or I try and upload to Odysee as well. It all takes time to record or encode, so I have to do some post-processing on this to cut it into 2 shows, and then once I upload it, it has to code into the video processing or the video sites technology. So it all takes time. So apologies, but if you want to watch all of it, if you want to watch the rest of the show, head on over to Rumble. And thanks for watching, everybody, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.